2026. Happy New Year, everyone. On the agenda today, we have the public comment first. So please, if you would like to do public comment, type something or notify us so that we have the opportunity to call on you and get your comments in. Then after and then after public comment, the bulk of the meeting today is going to be on the HUD Continuum of Care NOFO updates and next steps with Amanda. And then we will just do a wrap up and adjourn. So I will give a couple of minutes for, while we're waiting for public comment, can we just do introductions if you're on the board so I can make sure that I have everyone. Seems like people have been popping in. So I'll start with myself. I'm Sean Murphy and I am the chair.
I'm Jack Boyson, non-voting member.
Thank you. And then James, can we go online?
Yep. Take Maggie maybe first.
Okay, Maggie.
Hi, I'm Maggie Bagan. I got lost. I went to the wrong place for the meeting. So I'm just going to sit in my car and listen and mute myself because I'm on the street with the protesters now.
Okay, thanks, Maggie.
You're welcome.
And Avery?
I'm Avery Pearson with South Willamette Solutions. I use they, them pronouns. And I'm a voting member of the board.
Wakan?
Homes for Good, non-voting member.
Mayor Van Gordon?
Sean Van Gordon, Mayor of Springfield, and I'm a voting member.
Mike? Is it Mike? Is that Mike? Yeah, Mike?
Hi, Mike Fleck, voting member.
And Kim?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim with Hope and Safety Alliance, voting member.
Sorry, we'll keep jumping around. I'm Sheila.
That's okay. Sheila?
Sheila Wegner, she, her pronouns, Oregon Department of Human Services, non-voting member.
That's it for members.
Did we miss anyone?
Oh, Reagan.
Oh.
Yeah, hi, I'm sitting in for Mayor Knudsen today of Eugene. I'm the Homeless Services Manager at the City of Eugene. My name is Reagan Watches. I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you, Reagan. Great. And with that, do we have anything for public comment? No. Okay. And wait, and we have a quorum, right? So we do have to approve the agenda, correct?
No.
We don't have to do it today? Okay, all right. All right, so we will close public comment and then we'll move on to Amanda with the updates.
Can't help myself. I have to throw in, I just want to say that if you're struggling to understand what's going on with the continuum of care, just know that we are dealing with the same challenges and that Amanda has been phenomenal in tracking the bouncing ball of the continuum of care applications. And you'll notice that I've said that in a plural fashion because there are now more than one. And so just want to give a shout out to Amanda and all your efforts and time and energy to understand, where we are today, and to all of you for just continuing to, work with us through these processes because it's not simple. And there's a lot of moving pieces, but Amanda already has done an amazing job of helping us understand and will continue to share information. So just Amanda, thank you.
And I appreciate you also for helping me simplify things when I am too detailed. That's how I am.
Before you get started, please members, because this is the only thing on the agenda, if you have questions, just unmute and say, I got a question, comment, or concern as we're going through the PowerPoint.
Okay. So just to share, like Kate mentioned, things are sort of bouncing around, moving very quickly, and there are kind of multiple things happening simultaneously that might lead to quite a bit of confusion about where we are and how we got here. So just kind of wanted to give a really clear picture of sort of where we started and where we are now. So you'll remember back in November had released that fiscal year 25 notice of funding opportunity, or NOFO. Since then, you'll remember 2 lawsuits separately were filed, one by a coalition of states and one by National Alliance to End Homelessness, along with other organizations. And so since that time, the process for the NOFO has sort of been lying within the courts, dealing with those lawsuits. And so things have kind of been fluctuating quickly based on that. So after those lawsuits had rescinded, you'll remember the first NOFO in early December, and then had released a revised one on December 19th. And that happened just at the same time. That same day was a hearing for those lawsuits. And just following that, the judge has issued a preliminary injunction, which essentially is barring HUD from enforcing any of the fiscal year 24 NOFOs, either the previous one or the one they currently have posted. And we'll talk more about what that means. And so we'll talk about kind of where we are in these last few steps that have occurred up until literally today, where we're expecting some next steps. Okay. So what we mean when we say that a preliminary injunction was granted, I'm learning very quickly some of these terms that I'm not familiar with and have had to use in the past. And so certainly not a lawyer, but have been following along with the court cases as that's how we're getting information. These things are not necessarily being sent out or posted by HUD at this point. We are literally following this within the court dockets to find out this information largely. And so the fiscal year 25 NOFO essentially and the challenge conditions in it are just at this point halted by a court order. They cannot move forward on it, cannot implement it, cannot execute that NOFO. And so while that is happening, the injunction basically states that they have to maintain the status quo that existed under the previously posted NOFO for fiscal year 24-25. So that was the one from last year that was supposed to be for 2 years. And they've indicated that HUD essentially has to take all steps necessary to process eligible renewals for fiscal year 25 funding through that NOFO at this point. It did not indicate that they have to obligate or award funds at this point. They simply need to open a process for us to apply for renewal through that NOFO. And they also had to sort of file a report with the court, kind of outlining the steps that they're going to take to do that and what the timeline is, and must inform us within 14 days. And so that timeline essentially was January 6th. And so by January 6th, they were going to open the competition again and provide a deadline and instructions for applying for renewal. They were clear that they reserve the right to implement a new NOFO if a court order does not prohibit them from doing so. And then they indicated a potential deadline of February 19th in that implementation plan that they filed with the court. So it's important to note that a motion was filed for an extension. And so we're expecting by today that HUD will release some information to recipients about what they need to do to apply for renewal, what those steps are, and what the deadline is. So all of this is tentative until they send out something official. They did indicate we will have to do a ranking and that they anticipate and expect to review awards by May of 2026. So that was still somewhat with the timeline we were expecting before. So as of now, based on that information, we will plan to conduct a competition to renew projects, renewal projects based on that previous NOFO. So we're going back and re-looking at that one. They may end up, there's obviously going to be some changes. The deadlines within that NOFO are no longer accurate. Things like that might be changed when they repost it. But we expect that it by and large will be the same content-wise. And so any of the COC and YHDP youth homelessness demonstration projects awarded in fiscal year 24 would be eligible for renewal under the fiscal year 25 grant period. So we will work obviously with the COC committee to determine any projects that need to be reallocated, but we don't anticipate sort of the big reallocation that happened with that fiscal year 25 NOFO, as that was really a result of that 30% cap on permanent housing, which is not in the fiscal year 24-25 one. So we may have some movement of grants, but not sort of what we had initially planned on. So the new projects through reallocation, there's not an indication that there would be like additional bonus new money. It's all through renewal money. But those project types would be permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, joint transitional rapid housing, and supportive services for coordinated entry. So you'll note that transitional housing, supportive services only, and SSO outreach, which are the project types that we had put out in a request for proposals for a selection process. Those are not eligible categories under that previous notice. Those were new eligible categories under the fiscal year 25 NOFO that's no longer enforceable. So that sort of selection process at this point is just on hold. We can't move forward with, submitting those applications to HUD through this process. So those would just kind of hang out there for now. If something happens and HUD releases a fiscal year 25 NOFO after the court order is lifted or something like that, we could potentially use those, but right now those are just sort of there. If we're implementing renewals through that NOFO, we do expect that the COC committee will meet to finalize our renewal scoring. That's sort of our evaluation intent to renew process. We already completed that, but we'll just have to revisit it, make sure that still meets what we need for this particular NOFO for the purposes of ranking. And they will discuss if there are any reallocations to be made, and obviously complete the final ranking that is likely to be required. So the PHB will need to convene if the deadline remains as February 19th. We'll likely need to convene outside of our normal schedule because I think we would need that approval prior to that scheduled date in February to approve that final ranking and final submission. We won't, I believe, have a narrative part, but there will be an approval of overall submitting the applications that we're submitting and the ranking. Questions about any of that so far?
I think if I can hit home, Amanda, that was incredible. Thank you. It's just amazing how much has happened in the last couple of months. What I want to hit home is that today we are in the best possible scenario that we could be in order to sustain our COC programs that were funded through the last NOFO. And that things could still fall apart. But at this point, the programs that were funded, permanent supported housing, rapid rehousing, have an opportunity to receive funding for another year, is the way the courts have set this up again. And we need to potentially rank our existing projects again, as you mentioned, Amanda. And so that's just basically, you know, how many are going to be in tier 1, which would be guaranteed funding, and then how many would be in tier 2, which would be funded based on our score from last year's application. And so there are still some X factors that we deal with and our existing programs deal with. But again, at this point in time, we're in our best case scenario for the next year.
Is that a smile I see on your face?
It's a cautious one.
It is very cautious.
Smile.
Yeah, so this was a good, this is in our favor. This is good news that we potentially can continue funding for a year. And I believe tier 1 in the last one was 90%. So the overall majority of projects would essentially be secure for most COCs. And so that's good news. And again, we still don't know. There's not a final court decision. Any number of things could change that in the next several weeks. So as of today, yes, we're very cautiously optimistic about this as of now.
Well, this beats our meeting in December.
Yeah.
Yes. There were a couple of chat.
Oh. Check the chat. Just comments. So I did want to highlight, while the fiscal year 25 notice is not enforceable at this time, I did want to just share some of the things that HUD had changed in it, just to give an indication of some things we might still see in the future. So they rescinded it and basically attempted to repost it in order to respond to some of the things that were in the lawsuit and address some of those concerns. And so a lot of the things that changed reflect those items that were in the lawsuits. So they included a 30% set aside for new permanent housing projects. They included a 2-track submission process, one of which was supposed to be due at the end of January, the next end of February. The 30% cap on renewal permanent housing remained. The 30% tier 1 still was in there. And the combined amount is for those 2 tracks is still your same amount. There's not new money there. It's just they're splitting the pot essentially between 2 tracks. And the reason that they indicated for doing that was because they wanted to be able to award essentially those renewals very quickly and not have the new project assessment, which takes longer, hold up those awards. And so they submitted that sort of renewals would be submitted on the normal track. New projects would be on that extended one because those have a much more extensive review process for awarding them. So they still included those same project types. Some of the main differences is they no longer excluded substance use disorder as a disability, which was, again, problematic for a number of reasons and concerning in the last one. They removed a reference to renewal thresholds that prohibited recipients who rely on a definition of sex other than binary. They changed the criteria around enforcement of public camping bans and drug enforcement. It's still there, but the way that they're asking for it was a little different. They weren't necessarily asking about specific laws, but how we communicate and work with law enforcement or cooperate on enforcing those types of things. So a little bit of a different language approach there. And then they removed the policy initiative bonus that was focused on verification of immigration status and replaced that with prohibiting harm reduction. So some notable changes. And if we do see, another fiscal year 25 NOFO appear based on court proceedings, or, perhaps some of these things might show up in the next notice as well. So just keeping them in mind so that we know maybe a different track that they might go down in the future. But it's promising that some of those things were at least adjusted, although there's still obviously big concerns within it. So really what's next is the court process and decisions are obviously going to dictate what will happen. So we are closely following that. You also can closely follow that online. We can always send out a link to sort of that webpage where you can kind of follow along with what's happening on those cases. That's probably the most up-to-date way to keep on top of it. And due to the very delayed timeline, right, we're already into 2026. And so we're actually bumping up against the next competition period for fiscal year 26 at this point. So we expect that even after we finish this process, we'll likely see the next notice very shortly after, because that's usually around summer, June. And then we expect likely in that one, at least, that a lot of the changes that HUD would like to make are probably going to still occur in some fashion. And so we don't anticipate we're in the clear past this year. We do anticipate, there will be a big reallocation likely in the future. There will be reductions in permanent housing. It just remains to be seen to what extent, or if they have to go through some other process to get those kind of things approved through Congress, for example. We don't know what will come out of the court decision. So, but we should sort of keep that in mind and keep planning for that and expecting that, so that we're not having to do that in a scramble like we were going to have to. So like Kay mentioned, it really just gives us more time right now to consider and implement changes and expect those a little bit more in advance than we were. And the judge in the case is really clear that they're reviewing, right, the process that HUD went through to make these changes and whether they have the authority to do that in the way that they did, not the actual content of the policies that are within it. So they're just reviewing, did they follow the Administrative Procedures Act? Did they follow the statute and what they're required to do? So that's what they will likely probably rule on, not necessarily whether they agree with the policies in it. Let me see if there's a question that came in the chat. So Heather had asked in the chat, will the applicants of the NOFO need to resubmit any part of their application to be more in line with the new requirements? So we're not sure what will be changed. It sounds like it has to, for the most part, maintain the status quo that was in the fiscal year 24-25 NOFO, so they can't sort of make major shifts in what was in there. But we'll have to see what they send out to recipients, hopefully today, as far as instructions on what needs to be submitted and what the content of that is. So we just don't have those details yet. And then Wakan asked what impact is still expected for programs that had contracts that ended 12/31, given the delay. Thanks for that question. So we did have one, we do have one grant that has already expired. That was the Schenkel MLK Commons grant. That expired. It's on a really early year, so it expired 12/31 of 25. We are utilizing, Homes for Good is utilizing other funding to sort of float the MLK side of that for the beginning part of this year. To keep that grant going. The Schenkel side was scattered site units. There was not funding to sort of continue that while this was being figured out. And typically we would continue it, but that's when funding is usually more secure, more sort of like a safe bet that we would receive it. Whereas this year it was far more risky. And many other COCs are facing that as well. It's just a different risk level. So that one has already ended. Those folks were moved into other units through another program at that agency. And so I don't know at this point whether we will sort of include that portion in what we renew, because it will be retroactive, but that program has already kind of ended. And so we'll have to just make a decision on how we want to move forward with that, understanding that, right, these changes will likely still occur very quickly after. So those are all things that we will consider in terms of grant start and end dates.
Did we have 100% replacement or 100% of the people who were there have been moved? Thank you. I'm looking for the right word.
Yeah, my understanding is from Shelter Care is they had another program funded through state funding that they were able to sort of shift folks in place to that
in those other
source.
Other areas. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so at this point is a current loss of those units for the moment, yes. So we will see how that plays out. Any other questions?
I think you got another one in the chat.
Oh. So I think we were just gonna open that up for sort of discussion. Any other questions, concerns?
And I will I'm gonna start with Pat.
No,
But I'm just gonna do the round robin and check in with everybody. So if you got any questions, comments, we can make sure you have opportunity. Pat, anything you wanna?
nothing other than probably happened before I came to the room, but praise for your work, Amanda. You've been a stalwart throughout this entire process. It's just remarkable how you continue to sit there with that same look on your face.
Keep that. And then for myself, none. There's one clarification. So it looked like HUD had made some changes that were those connected to the administrative process, or no, like the 9 primary and the immigration stuff, was that all connected to, or are they did they start working on something and now they're just looking at the review? I'm just wondering, is there a chance that stuff would be brought back into the new
The
NOFA?
initial content?
Yes,
Not the change.
yeah, so it looks like they took it out before it got to the judge. Now I'm wondering, is that because that was part of the administrative piece that they were looking for? Or could those exclusions be brought back in?
I think it would depend on how the court probably
Okay.
rules on whether those followed procedure or whether they can change through a NOFO, for example. So it looks like they were willing to change them just in order to meet what was being challenged in the court. And I think they were hoping, it would be like, well, this is irrelevant now and it's moot and we can move on. But that wasn't the case of what the judge decided.
Okay.
But that was what, in the hearing, they were kind of arguing, well, we took it down and so now it's not relevant anymore. So I think they were trying to get around that, but. Does that
So
answer your
now,
question?
yeah, it sounds like, so that is also depends on what the judge says about the process
I
review,
think
that
so,
those things potentially could come back.
Yeah, and it could come back in the NOFA, or they could say, you can do these things, but you have to do it through, right, this process. And so it could take longer if it needs to go through Congress or some other longer process to get approval. Some of the argument is that certain things have to go through public comment periods, things like that for change. So we'll see what they end up saying. But I think it's important in that reposted fiscal year 25 NOFO had essentially really doubled down on here are the things we want to do and here are the reasons why. And we truly believe that this is not working and this is the direction we're going. So I don't think there's a chance that, overall they would not be moving forward with implementing sort of the broad policy changes they're talking about. They're very adamant that this is the direction they're going.
Jack, any?
No, just thank you for not only all the help and all the information, but the communication's been phenomenal. So thank you. Yeah.
Here, yeah. It's been challenging for me. Typically I can stay on top of it, but even I'm like, wait, what is?
It's made something so
A lot.
complicated, less complicated. So thank you.
It's a lot.
Reagan, any?
I don't think so. I just, thanks and kudos to Amanda and the county team for navigating this mess and translating it to us in a way that we can understand it. It's still, there are pieces that are still, I'm not quite sure I'm really fully understanding, but I feel like I'm tracking the high level where we're at. I guess the one clarity that I'm not super clear on where we're at right now. If you go back a slide, so what is it? It sounds like we know the guidelines for what is going to move forward and what this body may need to vote on next month. But like, what are we expecting to come out today? That's like further information. Can you kind of distinguish that a little more?
Yeah, so what we're expecting, HUD's required by that court order to, by today, notify continuum of care recipients and COCs of what the process is to apply for their renewal. So essentially they have to open the competition by today. Indicating here are the things you need to do to submit applications through eSnaps. Here are the deadlines and here's what's expected. So we are expecting that sometime today. I didn't see it right before this meeting. I was hoping it would be. But yeah, once that comes out, we'll take a look and we'll send something out and we'll kind of open up our local competition again and let everyone know what we need to do.
Okay, great. But we know like the things on the slide 7, a lot of the things that were problematic will not, I mean, we feel confident that's still being adjudicated like in court.
Yeah, the fiscal year 25 stuff, this is not going to be in what is released today. This is not enforceable, just to keep in mind, you know, for the future of what they're hoping to do.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I will also share that now historically, we have reason to think that there might be another extension. So we're not positive it'll come out today.
Yeah, we're hoping.
Mayor Van Gordon? Avery, any questions or comments from you?
No comments from me, but thanks, Amanda. Your calm is contagious.
Heather? Kim?
No, just great job. I'm in other committees with lawsuits and that sort of thing, so it can be very challenging. So thank you for the team. They're doing an amazing job.
Maggie? Mike?
Yeah, just same thing. Kudos. This has been quite an education. Our agency does not have any COC funding. And so joining the COC committee and working with Amanda on that. And then I was in the reviewing committee, which was quite an education. And I have a whole new appreciation for all the work the county staff do. So I just want to give a big thank you because it's a ton of work.
Sheila?
I have no comments. Also want to just concur with everyone. This is amazing work and thank you for this presentation.
And Wakan?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Really appreciate the summary. And I guess I'm just curious, like now that we know we have this additional time, we know these changes are coming, how is Lane County kind of thinking about preparing for the 26 NOFO, expecting kind of the language that you see on the 25 slide? So I guess I'm just curious how y'all are thinking about preparing for the changes.
So I think right now we're waiting for what's coming out today, and then maybe once we know more, we certainly know the direction of where HUD wants to go. So we were expecting that to happen very suddenly, and we had to make those decisions very quickly, which really wasn't ideal, and was just frankly very, very difficult for us to do. And so I think now we can maybe take more time to revisit what we've already decided, make sure that's what's best, do some more planning around our projects and what we really want to hold on to, what can shift, because we know that 30% cap is probably going to be in there most likely, and that they have emphasized they absolutely want this to be more competitive, and so tier 1 is not likely to be more than 30%. So we know those things are probably still true, and that still puts most of our funding at risk going forward. And so I'm just glad we now have sort of more time to think through that, make sure we're making the right decisions, and maybe assess our projects more thoroughly than we had a chance to do before. And certainly when we think about new projects to submit, that was also a very quick process. We put that out in a couple of days, really. And so I think maybe we could do a more thorough and better job of making sure we have the best projects to also replace anything that we're losing and make sure we are maintaining the best number of units that we can. So welcome everyone who wants to help contribute to those conversations, and certainly once we at least figure out what's happening with this. I don't think we're gonna necessarily wait for the next one to come out starting in February. We're gonna already start having those conversations about what needs to happen next, I think.
Awesome. I'm glad that we're in this place, and I'm glad that we're starting to think about how to prepare for the next one. So yeah, thanks, Amanda. Appreciate it.
Rolling all through. It'll just be an ongoing COC competition, never ending.
I think I've got everybody.
I think the only other piece to talk about is just as far as the meeting we have scheduled for next week. You know, I think we could hold it still and have another kind of informational session based on the information we get today. I think it's unlikely information that's released today will require any action from the board at next week's meeting. So I just don't know, chairs, how you want to move forward or how folks, you know, want to move forward. There's also a question from Maggie, but.
Maggie asked about whether there's a point in submitting comments to federal government. So there's, I don't know if you mean exactly like advocacy, but there are still a number of advocacy opportunities happening, especially through the National Alliance. Their webpage has a lot of just content you can take and share with your representatives. The funding process is still happening for the overall federal budget. And so there's certainly a lot of opportunity to make sure that we maintain the level of COC funding that we're receiving, because that's still not decided, and Congress needs to decide on a budget. Otherwise we'll face another shutdown very soon. So those things are still being decided. So I think there's a lot of still room for the in that.
Yeah. I have a friend who's part of the Coalition on Human Needs in Washington, D.C. If anybody else wants to link up with them, they're really good about providing information.
Thank you. Yeah, still continue to do that advocacy and contact representatives, emphasizing how important this funding is and maintaining permanent housing is.
Thank you.
So with that, I am looking at the board, which is mostly out there, for the executive meeting for next week, of whether there was anything you all felt like we needed to bring back or discuss. I mean, I don't think anything's going to change with the continuum of care and the competition, anything significant. But is there anything you all would like to have a quick update on about what's going on, that we could gather information?
So Chair, may I ask, is that asking if we need next week's meeting, or this one suffices to cover all the items that?
Well, I think part of it too is just recognizing that we likely will have to have a special meeting in February as well due to the timing. So I think just being, you know, recognizing all the capacity that the board has to meet, and how they want to manage that.
Yes.
And if we don't have a meeting, staff could commit to sending out an update next week so that they're abreast of the latest happenings.
For what my vote is worth, I'm fine with no meeting next week.
Yeah, I see another is comfortable with that. Mayor Van Gordon?
Yeah, this information's so, you know, rich and deep, but like, I don't feel like we need to meet next week.
I am not hearing anybody banging on the door for an additional meeting next week, so we will cancel next week's meeting, and we'll have to reach out to the board because we will have to have a meeting before February 19th.
That's the deadline.
If that's the deadline. So, and I'm sure the staff will let us know as soon as possible so we can get something on the books. And so as usual, when we have to do these off of scheduled meetings, as we're coming up with dates, please let us know if you can't be there so that we know whatever date we settle on, that we will actually have a quorum so everything can be approved and we can move business forward. And with that.
One additional piece, just wanted to loop back to the conversation that the board had regarding the point in time count. As some of you may have seen, there were some comments in the Eugene Weekly last week regarding that decision. And I think there was just some clarity that maybe would be helpful to provide to ensure that folks are understanding just fully that decision. And so again, just want to emphasize that this is not a year that HUD is requiring the point in time count for unsheltered, the unsheltered point in time count. And it's not a requirement of the state. I think that had been conveyed in the weekly comments that it may be a requirement. So I wanted to clarify that. And then Carly and Amanda, I don't know if either of you have additional pieces related to the pit you want to put out there, but.
So the unsheltered count is not required. We will not be conducting it this year. The sheltered pit count and the housing inventory is required. So HMIS folks will be getting some reminders from us in the next few weeks, letting you know, like, hey, reminders to clean things up, and you'll hear afterwards too, how many shelter beds did you have and all that clarification, just like normal. So I think HMIS providers are gonna feel like it's pretty similar to previous years. We aren't doing that survey volunteer component that we have in past years. The other thing I just think is of note is we're one of the only counties that regularly does the unsheltered count every year. The metro area does not. But everyone did it in 2025. And the statewide pit count numbers from 2025 should be released any day. So I think that report we can maybe send out, because we got the numbers to proof. They were hoping to do it early, so we can maybe send that out to folks. But that only happens whole statewide count every other year, where we can really compare our numbers to others. So that should be available for what was a year ago now, very soon. It takes them a long time to get that in proof and check with everybody. But I think that's really about it. So that like the big planning effort, not required. The let's run some reports and do some cleaning, we'll just be doing like regular. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's another piece that maybe as we're going through the transition of what is going to be the new that we can throw in the unsheltered count and how we can come up with a system where we make sure that we're getting the count along with the resources and the services that are available. So, because as we know, fiscally, things are changing as well. And so because everything is a pendulum. And so now we're kind of on the leaner years of the pendulum with fiscal, but this gives us an opportunity to talk about how we can develop a plan to make sure that we have a robust unsheltered count with the resources that we have available. So while we might not have the volunteer piece, it might be using the street outreach and using the providers along with the continuum to make sure that we get a good count.
Yeah, I think also this may not surprise anybody. Every year HUD releases a notice of all the questions we have to collect for the unsheltered count if we're going to do it. We haven't seen them yet. So how do you plan a count with your volunteers and build your questions and your paper surveys if you still don't know what the questions are? We're less than 3 weeks out. So I have heard from many, many communities that they're skipping the count this year. It's a pretty common thing. We're not alone.
And as a result, there is no repercussions related to funding either. And so that I think is important for us to keep in mind, as well as because it is just an every other year requirement, no waiver is needed from HUD. It is just simply aligned with the requirements that exist and have existed for quite a long time.
Any other questions or comments?
Just one almost immaterial comment is every year the Board of Commissioners makes assignments as to who represents them on the various committees. And I asked for and received authority to continue to serve on this committee. So I will be here. One more year. And then one more year.
Excellent. Okay. All right. If there's no more questions or comments, we get to go early today. So meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.